Lord Mayor of the City of Kigali, Honorable Members of Parliament, both chambers, the Deputy Resident Representative of UNDP, members of Diplomatic Corps that are present, distinguished leaders from security organs, government institutions, development partners, private sector, civil society organizations, the media, and religious institutions. Dear guests, good morning. My name is Edward Kalisa. I work as Secretary General for Rwanda Governance Board, and I will be your MC for this event. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you for responding to our invitation to take part to this launch. Dear CEO, distinguished participants, we are here to witness the launch of the 9th edition of Rwanda Governance Scorecard. Rwanda Governance Scorecard is a homegrown tool that is aimed at enhancing accountability. Because as a government, as we chose to be accountable in our transformational journey, we also needed to put in place necessary mechanisms to effectively pursue it, and RGS is one of these mechanisms. Creating a culture of accountability and integrity in what we do not only improves effectiveness and efficiency, but also keeps us focused on our national commitments. Distinguished guests, RGS is a tool that assesses the state of governance in Rwanda based on 8 pillars, 35 indicators, and 144 variables. I don't want to go into the details of these because they will be presented in the next couple of minutes. But I would like to run us through the program for today. It's a very brief program that starts with remarks from one of our key partners in this journey of promoting accountable governance, the Deputy Representative of UNDP in Rwanda. Then we'll follow the presentation of the 9th edition of Rwanda Governance Scorecard that will be presented by Dr. Esther Kaitesi, who is the CEO of Rwanda Governance Board. And then we will have interactive session where each one of us will have an opportunity to make comments or ask questions. And thereafter, we will have a group photo. When the time comes, we will mention those who will participate in the group photo. And then we'll end our program with lunch. Dear CEO, distinguished guests, I now call upon the resident representative of UNDP to come and make her remarks. Thank you.
Mwaramutse, bonjour, good morning. My name is Varsha Redker. I'm the Deputy Resident Representative for the United Nations Development Program, Rwanda. Honorable Usta Kaiseti, Chief Executive Officer of Rwanda Governance Board, Honorable Mayor of the City of Kigali, distinguished representatives of government institutions, distinguished representatives of diplomatic missions and international organizations, distinguished representatives of the private sector, civil society and the media, my fellow colleagues from the One UN family, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, all protocols observed. Colleagues, something very interesting is happening this week in Kigali, in this great city, and in Rwanda. I was just talking to CEO. Things are really on the move. It's feeling a bit like pre-COVID pandemic times, where so many meetings, so many gatherings of the world are really centered in this great city of Rwanda. And that is really a good governance story, because the story of how Rwanda and the city has really addressed the COVID-19 pandemic, and you have reached all the benchmarks, I think, being one of the first or one of the top countries in terms of vaccinations on the continent, and the list goes on. But that is really a good governance story. And part of that story and that journey is what will be launched today, the 9th edition of What Gets Measured Gets Done. And this is a country that I have witnessed in living and having the honor of living here for 3 years. I'm starting my 4th year in this great country, really seeing this journey, and year after year, even in a COVID pandemic, the dedication of Rwanda Governance Board, led by CEO, to not let go of the Rwandan Governance Scorecard, because it's not just another scorecard, it's not just another indicator, a set of indicators, it's not just a document. I have personally had the privilege of witnessing how it's a living, breathing document that even in some of the most severe lockdowns in modern history, due to the COVID pandemic, the dedication of CEO and Rwanda Governance Board to maintain the Rwandan Governance Scorecard in the years of the pandemic, because in the hardest times is when you really need good governance, isn't it? And this is why we're all here today without our masks, because of that story of good governance of this country. So really, congratulations. At the outset, indeed, thank you for joining me in congratulating the government of Rwanda. On the outset, I wish to congratulate the government of Rwanda and the Rwanda Governance Board for the production and launch of the 9th edition of the Rwanda Governance Scorecard, and particularly for keeping the regularity of the production of this momentous report. On behalf of the United Nations Development Programme in Rwanda, I would like to express my sincere gratitude to Rwanda Governance Board for always inviting and associating UNDP with this important flagship tool for governance in Rwanda. Something else, amongst many things, I was saying it feels like pre-COVID times, so many incredible meetings because of the good governance in this country. The launch of the summit happened yesterday. I hope you are also following so many parallel exciting things happening in the country. But as we speak, His Excellency, the President of Rwanda, who invited the Deputy President of Kenya, launched the 10th edition of the Youth Connect Africa Summit. So the young people of the entire continent are here at the summit, as well as Rwanda hosting, in parallel to what we're all sitting here today, is all the parliamentarians of not only the continent but of the world are here for the Interparliamentary Union meeting. So again, why Rwanda? It's a governance story. The parliaments of the world would not be sitting here in this great city were it not for the governance story that's linked to this scorecard. I would also like to appreciate the contribution of all the stakeholders, many of you in the room, who provided inputs to this critical governance tool for Rwanda. It is impressive to see how different sectors and many of the institutions here have had, in your unique way, contributed through their own reports, research, assessments that form the basis of analyzing the trends of governance in Rwanda and devising recommendations. So we use these buzzwords like collective intelligence, big data, but Rwandan Governance Board is really doing that. They're not reinventing the wheel. So many of the assessment reports that several of us as development partners and different governance institutions that you produced are looked at and analyzed, and if they really have good quality data, I know that they are used in a culmination in this report. So it's collective intelligence at play and at its best. And most noteworthy, what I have personally witnessed, which is so incredible, I'm always so excited on the morning of these launches, sincerely, is that it's not just a report that has recommendations that, again, once a year, CEO in a few moments will launch and stand up here. But I always look forward to everybody coming with their notebooks, and I know your pens are out. I've witnessed it year after year, that this is a country where you pay attention. You when it's revealed now in a few minutes, you know in your mind as policymakers what your score was last year in your sector, and you pay attention to what you're going to see in a few minutes for this year, because not only are they recommendations, they're tracked year after year, and it goes into your IGIHE, it goes into your plans, and this is how you arrive at improving governance in this country. So again, congratulations. The Rwanda Governance Scorecard uses inputs from the Citizen Report Card, which portrays citizen perception and conveys the voice of citizen feedback. By including citizen perception, the Rwanda Governance Scorecard is not only sharing expert perception of the governance trends in Rwanda, but it also keeps people at the center of the assessment. Therefore, I wish to invite all of us to read the Rwanda Governance Scorecard, not only as a mere report, but rather listening to the voice of citizens and experts in governance as they are sharing with us the status to date and highlighting areas requiring attention and conveying the sense of urgency of action for a better Rwanda. I don't think I really need to call on you because I see it and I know you do it, which is incredible. While we are launching the Rwanda Governance Scorecard as a national assessment tool, its impacts transcends the national level to play an important role in the context of renewed multilateralism and the shared commitment to sustainable development. An assessment of the status of domestication of SDG 16, the governance SDG in Rwanda, has been conducted, and results will better inform national planning and development processes. As we wait for the 2023 SDG Voluntary National Review, assessment tools like the Rwanda Governance Scorecard will be instrumental in assessing the level of implementation and domestication of the SDGs. I wish to commend the government of Rwanda, and particularly RGB, for the consistency in producing data on governance, which has informed the national strategy for transformation. Today, we're celebrating 12 years of accountability through data, but also 12 years of improved evidence-based planning at national level, thanks to Rwanda Governance Scorecard. This is another thing that I have personally witnessed. It's been 12 years, but in year after year, I've personally witnessed how the Rwanda Governance Scorecard is tweaking and improving and looking at, as data analytics change in the world, continually tweaking and improving the analytics and the data, persons for disability being added in the last years as just one example. Today, the Rwandan Governance Board will present the findings of the Rwanda Governance Scorecard 9th edition, reflecting the state of governance in Rwanda in several governance pillars. This edition of the Rwanda Governance Scorecard, as previous sessions, offered an opportunity for all of us to reflect on the state of governance in Rwanda, improve areas that need to be improved, define strategies to address those that are lagging behind. The report offers a unique opportunity for policy discussion through the various governance pillars. And that is also one of the most important aspects of the scorecard. It's not that it sits as indicators that you look at in terms of where you're doing, but it's really, that's important also, but it's really the discussions and the conversations that it generates. And I really encourage us to keep that momentum because I've seen that at play. So let's continue with that until year after year until the next one. Governance is beyond the traditional definition and embraces the private sector. It is crucial that we rethink business growth and sustainability strategies, including entrepreneurship skills, particularly for the youth, who constitute the majority of the population in Rwanda and beyond. The inclusion of the private sector in planning, strategizing, and implementing the National Development Agenda is of paramount importance. The private sector should not only be considered as service providers, but as sustainable development actors. As we lead up to the road to the COP27, the big climate conference that's coming up in November, that is really being dubbed the Africa COP in Egypt, I expect this report will stimulate debate on how our communities can have more access to clean energy, green growth, and how world governments can collaborate to deliver greenhouse gas emission reductions and help ensure a just transition to a net zero economy, which alleviates poverty and helps secure a sustainable future. I would like to invite all of us today to critically and constructively reflect on the findings of the current edition of the Rwanda Governance Scorecard. And we can set the ground to leave a legacy of the world we want, the Rwanda we want, for the next generations to come. I wish to reiterate our full support to Rwandan governance accountability tools such as the Scorecard, but most importantly, for stimulating discussion around the emerging governance issues that we will see shortly. Let us recall some quotes. What gets measured gets managed. What gets measured gets done, from some famous, you will recall those, management experts. In the next year, a flagship will happen that the CEO and I have been talking about for the last few years. As you know, it's the 9th edition that is being launched today, and that means next year is the 10th year. That's an incredible milestone, a decade of this tool that really the world is looking at as a benchmark. As you know, many governments, not only on the continent, but all over the world, come to visit a CEO and Rwanda Governance Board to look at this tool as not only an African, but a global South-South and good practice. So stay tuned for next year, and let's collectively all think how we can use the 10th edition next year to look at the recommendations, but to have a broader discussion perhaps with the continent, perhaps with the world, as the journey from what we launched today and the recommendations that we will talk about a year from now at the 10th edition, where we will all celebrate the milestone of the decade of the Rwandan Governance Scorecard on the road to that next year. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Deputy RR. Thank you for your kind words and informative comments. We know that UNDP has been a reliable partner in this journey, and we believe that we'll continue working together, and that we will keep measuring so that we do what we measure, because it helps us to identify where shortfalls are and fix them. Thank you so much. I now take this opportunity to invite the CEO of RGB to make her presentation of the findings of Rwanda Governance Scorecard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, MC. The Lord Mayor, City of Kigali, the Deputy RR, UNDP, honorable members of Parliament, both the Senate and the Chamber of Deputies, members of the Diplomatic Corps, leaders in the faith sector, the Auditor General, the Deputy Ombudsman, representatives of the security sector, distinguished invitees, good morning, and thank you very much for responding to our invitation. I am quite in a research mode, and I will say all protocols observed, because somehow the research mode and the protocol mode don't happen at the same time. So please bear with me if I missed out on certain protocols, but we really appreciate that all of you, including the academic core, including the media sector, are here to hold us accountable, to speak about one of the most accountability tools that we produce in this country. As earlier mentioned, the 9th edition of the Rwanda Governance Scorecard has the same purposes and reasons as previous editions. It is indeed an accountability and transparency tool that is founded on the core definitions of governance in this country, where we have really emphasized that governance for us, and good governance in particular, is understood as accountability, transparency, and efficiency in deploying our scarce resources. The governance scorecard is really going to be addressing some of those accountability spaces, of spaces of transparency, and of really cross-checking how efficient we are using the scarce resources that I think even post-COVID makes it more a relevant reason to do it. Governance in Rwanda is also defined or considered to be understood as a citizen-centered approach that ensures that there is both participation and inclusion of all Rwandans and all residents of this country, irrespective of the differences. It's also understood as that governance that considers having the rule of law as a core element, but that rule of law has a particular mandate. It's a rule of law that supports and protects its citizens without discrimination. And of course, you will understand that this country has suffered from the worst form of discrimination, the genocide against Tutsis. So it makes all the relevance that the rule of law must be interpreted from that perspective, the perspective that the law should be in favor and in protection of all of us as citizens without any form of discrimination. It's also that governance that ensures the social and economic transformation towards rapid development. And the invitees in this room come across those sectors. You are either delivering through government, delivering from the faith-based organization, delivering from the parliament, delivering from civil society organizations, and of course delivering from the media and the academia. So here we speak as partners in government and in governance, and have a very much involved responsibility of transformation in pursuit of rapid development. The Rwanda Governance Scorecard is a quantifiable index, as earlier mentioned, that gauges the state of governance in this country. It is the status of governance in this country that we issue every year. It assesses, of course, as earlier mentioned, the state of governance against national, regional, and global targets. And this is certainly made easy for us because we have national priorities. They are set in the Vision 2050, but also they are mostly at this implementation level set in the National Strategy for Transformation. Those targets become the basis for which we assess the governance status of this country. Its method reflects both global governance standards and our homegrown approaches. And the Deputy RR earlier mentioned that some of the data sources are the institutions that you're working from that are doing everyday implementation of the National Strategy of Transformation, are the other oversight institutions that are doing assessments in terms of accountability and in terms of transparency. And certainly there is the citizen voice through the Citizen Report Card as one of the sources of data. The objective of the Rwanda Governance Scorecard is to generate credible and reliable data on governance. It is an evidence-based tool that informs policy, decision-making, and improvement in terms of delivery. I think as you read through the governance scorecard, you realize that at the end we have policy recommendations, and every year for the multi-year policy recommendations, we establish the status from the implementers in the different sectors. The governance scorecard is also intended to contribute to current and contextualized knowledge about Rwanda. There is a lot of knowledge, but how contextual is that knowledge? Because if you have contextual knowledge, if you have current knowledge, your interventions will be informed. In the absence of that, you might respond to a different society, yet you intended to respond to the current society. The Rwanda Governance Scorecard is an 8-pillar-based indicator and has an 8-pillar based index that has 35 indicators and 144 variables. As I earlier mentioned, some of our sources include international indices, international frameworks, homegrown pillars, and other available sources of data. We use primary data that is mostly generated from the Citizen Report Card, the Rwanda Media Barometer, one of the other publications, the Rwanda Bribery Index that is produced by Transparency Rwanda, and of course our service delivery monitoring reports. But we also use secondary data. Those are reports from administrative documents collected from concerned institutions, including most of the institutions that you're representing here. Now, our scores have color related. So from 0 to 39.9, we use red. So even when you don't look at the number, you will know that the color is within that limit. Between 49 and 59, between 40 and 59, we use an amber color. And between 60 and 79.9, we use a yellow color. So most of the pillars will be reflecting their performance, and the indicators and the variables will also be reflecting the color in which they belong to. And of course, between 80 to 100, we go green. We celebrate those colors in terms of informing the population. Our scoring method is really made against those commitments that I said, and is the current status. So we use the most current data that is available in terms of reports, in terms of status. And in some cases, you're going to see us using about 1 year or 2 years data, but it depends. Some of these sources of data will be a given period. So we will not have intentionally used old data, but that will be the current data in terms of the particular source that we are using. The 8 pillars that I mentioned include the rule of law pillar, the economic and governance and corporate governance pillar, quality of service delivery, anti-corruption, transparency and accountability pillar, investing in human and social development, safety and security, participation and inclusion, and then political rights and civil liberties. The 8 pillars reflect those sectors in different ways. Now I'll go to the findings of the RGS 9th edition, and the overall performance of the pillars. As I mentioned, when you see the colors, you relate where the pillars belong. Safety and security has the highest performance with 95.53. The rule of law has 90.81. Political rights and civil liberties has 87.84. And corruption, transparency, and accountability is at 87.19. And then the other 3 pillars are under 80, economic and corporate governance at 77.85, quality of service delivery at 77.69, and investing in human and social development being the last performing pillar at 75.81. As we share this data, I hope in the different areas that you intervene in, you're going to be asking yourself the questions, how better can we do? What have we done differently that has informed the improvement? Or what have we not done that is making us miss the targets? Now, I would like to compare the current edition with the previous edition, which is the 8th edition, 2021. And as you see it, on the rule of law pillar, there is an improvement from 87.8 to 90.81. On the political rights and civil liberties, there is still an improvement from 83.80 to 87.84. Participation and inclusion was at 84.19 and now stands at 87.19. And of course, safety and security stood at 95.47 and is now at 95.53. Investing in human and social development was at 75.23 and now is 75.81. And corruption, transparency, and accountability was at 86.76 and is now at 87.31. Quality of service delivery declined a little from 81.86 to 77.69. And then the economic and corporate governance pillar was at 74.65, moving to 77.85. And of course, we can all attest that the economy is rebounding in its in different ways, which impacts the kind of transformation, the kind of difference that we are seeing. Now I'm going to go the RGS 9th edition findings per pillar. And in that, we speak about the pillar itself and the indicators that are part of the pillar, and sometimes some of the variables. Of course, the details are in the publication. The rule of law pillar measures the performance of the legislature at 93.90, access to justice at 91.99, performance of the prosecution at 99.17, and then the performance of the judiciary at 78.19, which registered a little bit of a decline in that regard. Now, we always look at the most improved indicators, and the most improved indicator was access to justice that recorded a plus 5.97. Of course, you will understand that the country was opening much more. The causes of, managing COVID had taken a bit of a good stance, and business was getting much more into normal. But we also realize that under the rule of law, there are certain indicators, indicators that need improvement. And in particular, the performance of the judiciary, as I said, has a few elements that need to be improved. The variables on the performance of the judiciary indicate that there is a backlog of cases in the judiciary, especially at the Supreme Court and higher levels, that stands at 32.4%, which records the reason why this particular pillar has had a few areas that need improvement. The percentage of cases processed by the courts, against all cases in courts, stands at 68%, which means that over 32% cases do not really get processed in the right time that it should be processed in. The political rights and civil liberties pillar, as I earlier said, stands at 87.84. Its 5 indicators, democratic rights and freedoms, is at 84.30. The role of non-state actors in governance is at 77.7. Political organizations stands at 93.20. Access to public information is at 89.88. And respect for human rights and core international conventions is at 94.74. The most improved indicator in this area is the respect for human rights and core international conventions that registered 11.59, and I want to explain the registration of this improvement. We also assess how much the country is reporting on the conventions that we are party of. And of course, in the previous year, we were able to realize in the year before, in 2021, there was a particular report that had not been delivered by the country. But this year, when we were doing the assessment, we realized that all the required reports actually had been submitted in accordance to the commitments of the country. And that's why really the improvement comes out very outstanding. We also have the implementation of ratified international human rights conventions that leads, as I earlier said, and of course, citizen satisfaction with access to information, which is a result that we bring from the citizen report card, improved in terms of the appreciation of the citizens. There are areas that we believe need improvement, and as earlier said, the role of non-state actors in governance, which has the role of civil society in governance, as per the perception of citizens, also stands at 71%. The role of academia in governance, especially in policy formulation, is at 72.20%. Political organizations, citizen satisfaction with political organizations in promoting governance stands at 72.80%, which we think can be improved. remembering that political organizations also have a core mandate of civic education in terms of political practice and political rights. Democratic rights and freedoms, the journalists and media satisfaction with access to information, that is from the barometer, stands at 46%, and that as well needs improvement. And I think it's a good opportunity that as we speak to the audience that we have, to remind them that access to information is a right. If you don't know it, we don't know how to improve it. So it's important that apart from giving that information to the media, we are supposed also to share it with the public. So access to information, and some of the reasons why people really don't do this is there's nothing to hide. It's actually, I think, the media literacy that is yet to be improved, but we realize that it's an area that needs improvement. In the pillar for participation and inclusion, that stands at 87.19, we measure citizen participation through the CRC, which is 93.36%. We measure decentralization, which is at 89.64%. We measure the participation of non-state actors at 79.86%. And we measure the participation of power sharing and inclusiveness, which is part of our constitutional commitment, which is at 90.75%. And then gender equality in leadership, which stands at 82.33%. In this participation and inclusiveness pillar, the indicator on decentralization moved high at 4.93%, and you would appreciate that we had local government elections under conditions and circumstances that required a lot of being able to be innovative. But the fact that we were able to do elections from the village level to the district level, the citizens appreciated that decentralization has consistently moved on and the appreciation improved. Participation of non-state actors, while we said that it needs improvement, it also recorded an improvement in reality, and it recorded an improvement of plus 4.53. So we recommended improvement in the participation of non-state actors because we are still in yellow, but again, we are seeing positive trends in this regard. And then citizen participation improved highly according to the Citizen Report Card, with plus 4.30%. There are areas that still need improvement in some of the variables. We realize that in some of the variables and indicators, there are areas that need improvement. And those include gender equality in leadership. We will go into details, or you can look at that in details. Gender equality in leadership is positive in many ways. The cabinet is already above 50%. The parliament is above 60%. But when we come in public leadership, when we come in the leadership of other public institutions, when we go in the leadership of permanent secretaries, the gender margin is still lacking in a particular way. And we thought it's important that we highlight that we can do better. If we do very well at the highest level, we can do better even at lower levels when we are conscious of the inclusive aspects of it. Safety and security is really a pillar that has taken a lot of leadership in this process. And we measure maintaining security at 95.4%. We ask citizens how they see that, but there are certain other elements that come in. We measure national security that is appreciated at 99.90%. We believe that personal safety and property safety is still at 92.25%, although we know that there are areas that need to be fixed in that. And reconciliation and social cohesion and unity that is assessed by the Reconciliation Barometer stands at 94. In the last edition of the Reconciliation Barometer, stands at 94.58%. There are no areas that need improvement, but we need to sustain the gains in this particular pillar. Investing in human and social development stands at 75.81%. And in this pillar, we assess education, that is still at 76.76%. The health sector still performs, is the leading in this sector at 91%. Climate change and environmental resilience is still at 71.67%, and social protection still lags behind with 63.79%. And I think many of us here realize that inclusive and leave none behind requires that we really strengthen our commitments to social protection engagements. There are areas that need specific improvement in investing in human and social development, and that is in the education sector. We still realize that the quality of education, especially in the upper, is still lacking at 73.13%, and the challenge becomes much more when you go higher in secondary. At this level, we just look at it from the secondary level, the upper secondary level to down. The upper secondary level in particular has concerns with 44%. And there are also other areas that we think need attention. The net enrollment in upper secondary still has a 32.31% gap. The school dropout, I think the mayor of the city of Kigali would agree that we all need to improve on how to maintain our kids in schools. And school dropout remains lacking with 35.1%. The school feeding program, which also really informs the opportunities of having kids stay at school, is still also not performing to the level that we want it. I know government is really committed to including and improving this system, but it's still lacking at, it is appreciated by the citizens at 59.60%. Although it is lacking, although it still needs improvement, it's one of those variables that has recorded remarkable improvement as well. In the social protection pillar, indicator, we need to improve our investment in social protection programs. At this time, it stands at 68.98%. And as earlier mentioned, inclusive development will require that we collectively consider those that need our social protection in terms of engagement. And this is necessary for us to engage on because it also informs how you adjust your programs forward moving. Because I know most of the partners in this room are also very good partners in the social protection sector. Climate change and environmental resilience that ensures our survival, but also ensures the sustainability of our development, still has its own challenges. Environmentally sustainable settlement and use of energy is still at 72.47%. Environmental protection and mainstreaming also remains at 73.95%. The anti-corruption, transparency, and accountability pillar has 4 indicators. We ask people that record any incidences of corruption, and the 90% is not for those who experienced corruption. It's actually those who said that they did not experience corruption. That means that we still have 9 point something that confirmed that they have experiences, they have experienced incidences of corruption. So while we celebrate the 90%, I think the impact of corruption is bad even though it went to 1%. And therefore, we should remain committed in all the sectors that we are in. On our anti-corruption approaches, the citizens appreciate at 80%, 80.7%. And on areas of accountability, 87.83% also recognize the existence of accountability. And here we use variables from different sectors, including the report of the Auditor General and other sources. On the transparency pillar, that we also get data from the Office of the Ombudsman, we still remain at 90.52%. And of course, the transparency pillar includes public procurement, includes recruitment, but also includes the integrity of leaders in terms of asset declaration. And that is what brings the transparency at 90%. The most improved pillar, as indicated, the most improved indicator is the anti-corruption pillar. And here we also consider how much people appreciate the efforts of the citizens, the efforts of the institutions in dealing with corruption. There are areas that we think still need improvement. In the areas of transparency, the percentage of amount of tenders in open tenders compared to all tenders remain at 63.39%. And certainly we know that there is an online system. We also know the requirements of the law, that some tenders by their nature, the law permits that they cannot be open tenders. We know that there are also single census. There is a legal limit of what is acceptable, but the ambition is that we move to the highest level of using the open tenders as intended to foster transparency. In the area of accountability, the percentage of entities obtaining unqualified audit opinion is still at 70.8%, and we think that institutions across need to realize that an unqualified audit opinion needs to be obtained for us to enhance the commitments of accountability that we have as a country. Now, the quality of service delivery, which is at the cornerstone of how we do things, has five indicators as well. The service delivery in transformational governance, which really this is the performance as per the citizen report card mostly. We put together all the areas that we assess in transformational governance, and it stands at 88.56%. You will appreciate that under the transformational governance pillar, also safety and security, also the assessment of the security sector is, the assessment of most governance institutions is, and this leads as a pillar. I think the RR highlighted the foundations of governance and how they are impactful on what we do on a day-to-day basis as a country. Service delivery in social protection, in social transformation is still at 79.78. Quality of service delivery in public, private, and civil society, we do those assessments separately, is still at 77.48%. There is quite a lot to improve. Service delivery in economic transformation is still at 68.84%. And service delivery through ICT now stands at 73.79%. Over the last 3 years, we decided that because the NST1 requires that at least public services will be online at 100% by 2024, we wanted to have a sense of satisfaction in this sector, especially asking the citizens. And for the third time, I think now we know it is 73.79%. And indeed, many of us who went through COVID realized that the use of ICT was beefed by the existence of the terms and conditions that we were operating in during COVID-19. In the quality of service delivery, there are areas that we see need improvement. In the education sector, the level of citizen satisfaction with service delivery in agriculture, generally in the agriculture sector, in the different variables, is still at 61%. Level of citizen satisfaction with service delivery in livestock is still, that is in the economic sector. Sorry, the education sector is not what is intended here, it's the economic sector. Level of citizen satisfaction with service delivery in livestock sector is still at 59.56%. The level of citizen satisfaction with service delivery in infrastructure sector is still at 72.56%. And the level of citizen satisfaction with service delivery in land and settlement sector is still at 65.44%. And we think we need to improve in order to meet the targets of our NST1 by 2024. The service delivery through ICT, the level of citizen satisfaction with the use of mobile telephones still remains at 64.5%. And the mobile telephone has replaced our banks and many other sources. So it's important that we raise the citizen satisfaction in this regard. The level of citizen satisfaction with the use of ICT in education is still at 60%, 60.50%. And the level of citizen satisfaction with internet connectivity is still at 56%. And the backbone that the ICT is for the development of this country requires that some of these areas be given the right priority in terms of improvement in service delivery. The quality of service delivery in public, private, and civil society, quality of service delivery in the public sector is still at 69.39%, and the quality of service delivery in civil society sector is still at 73.64% as per the citizens' appreciation. The economic and corporate governance pillar stands at 77.83%. The macroeconomic indicators is at 81.90%. Foreign trade and industrialization is at 70.25%. Corporate governance is still at 76.67%. And the business environment promotion is at 82.55%. In the economic and corporate governance, the most improved indicator is macroeconomic indicators that recorded a +10 improvement. You will know that in the previous year, the economy had fallen to -3. And the rebound of the economy has actually recorded the macroeconomic indicators improvement to this level. Foreign trade and industrialization has improved with 3.64. And the most improved indicator, as earlier mentioned, is the economic growth rate that scored 100%. You will appreciate that according to the National Strategy for Transformation, each of these indicators has a particular target. And it becomes 100% if it exceeded the expected target in this particular period. So 100% should be understood within the perspectives of the targets that were intended initially. The tax revenue as percentage of GDP was also improved at 21.52%, and saving rates as percentage of GDP also improved with 14%. There are areas that still need improvement, of course. The macroeconomic indicators, which is the reduction of inflation rate. Many of you must have participated when the monetary policy was presented. The reduction of inflation rate still remains at 66.67%. The GDP per capita is still at 71.17%. Reducing percentage of people living below poverty line is still at 52.36%. Still remember, it is 52 against the initial target that we would have been at as per the NST1. And then the percentage of budget covered by domestic revenues is at 68%. Foreign trade and industrialization, export as percentage of imports is still at 40.40%, and exports growth is still at 55.29%. Business environment promotion, credit to private sector as percentage of GDP is still at 58.52%, and that also demands a bit of improvement. Now I'm going to take you to the trends. The Deputy RR mentioned that we are producing the RGS for the 9th edition. And we take all the pillars and correlate how they have been, or create a trend of how they have been performing over the years. You realize that the rule of law indicator, which is the blue line, moved from 67.71 at the beginning, now stands at 90.82. It has had a consistent growth at a given over the years. The political rights and civil liberties started with 71.43 9 years ago, and now stands at 87.84. And it also has recorded growth that is consistent. The participation and inclusive pillar also recorded a growth from 74 from the initial edition to 87 as we stand today. And the safety and security pillar has consistently been above 80% from the 87.26% at the beginning, now to 95.53%. Further, the trend of pillars, the other pillars, you realize that the economic and corporate governance pillar starts not from the first edition, but rather to the second edition. And when we started off, it's been at 74.93. You realize that it has a bit of fluctuations over the years. And today it stands at 77.83%. And of course, it's been having its own growth, but it's also fluctuations over the years. The quality of service delivery is one of those pillars that, despite the improvement, the rate of improvement doesn't come out very strongly. Now, why did we register a bit of a decline over the last year? Of course, there are a few things. We introduced in the assessment of service providers. So when we went to the assessment in the local government, we assessed how the citizens appreciate service delivery in the local government, but also we chose particular service providers. We asked about somebody who issues construction permits, the executive secretaries. We asked about the agriculturists in the sector. We asked about all of those different service providers to not only have the image of how people appreciate the services, but also include exact appreciation of the actual service providers. And we realized that it's important because that creates also a sense of appreciation. And some of the things that we find that are issues in this sector are really issues that the partners in this room can address. They include timeliness, somebody coming and going back several times. I think if we committed that all the staff that we lead in this building will not do that, they will serve at first contact. They include citizens not knowing what they are expected to bring to seek for a services. So some of our service charters have become silent in many ways. They include how we speak to the citizens. Sometimes it's really unfortunate that people don't appreciate to the level of 50% that we are rude in receiving them as service providers. So realistically, the challenges that we have in service delivery are less of hard things that we need to do, but rather the actual behavioral transformational things that include how we serve and how we really hold accountable our colleagues at the service level. The pillar on anti-corruption, transparency, and accountability was initially at 76.22%, and now we stand at 87.31%. That has continuously grown over the years. And the pillar on investing in human and social development, somehow the initial pillar looked the initial assessment looked very positive, but as we move on, we realize that the things that we assess in that sector, especially in the areas of education, in the areas of social protection, needs a little bit of improvement on how we do provide services in that sector. Now, I want to present something that we also do. We do not overanalyze those productions, but we choose some of the governance-related indices that happen beyond Rwanda, and we just give you an image of how they look. The RGS shows that. We have chosen to look at the Rwanda's performance on corruption. Now, I did not exhaust all the indices that we put in the book, but you realize that we chose some that are most relevant with the pillars that we do. Rwanda's performance on corruption, perception index, and we've done that since 2017. From the 2017 edition to the 2021 edition, Rwanda's position has been between 3 and 5, in Sub-Sahara, and even at the global level, we have been between 40 and 52. So that is the performance in that direction. Rwanda's overall ranking in Africa visa openness report. You know that as part of the Africa we want, or the Agenda 2063, opening our borders is one of the flagships. And there is a report that is issued on Africa Visa Openness Report that has been assessed since 2016. Rwanda has been between third place and 9th place. Of course, it's not that Rwanda declined in performance, but as other people introduced new measures, including those that hadn't introduced the measures, then the performance, the number of the rank improves according to that. But Rwanda remained committed to the Africa visa openness as part of its commitments. Rwanda's performance on the rule of law index, in 2019, Rwanda was 40th globally and 3rd in Sub-Sahara. In 2020, it was 37th globally and 2nd in Sub-Saharan Africa. And in 2021, Rwanda was 42nd globally and 1st in the Sub-Saharan region. Rwanda's performance on the Chandra Good Governance Index that just been introduced by a Singaporean think tank. In 2021, Rwanda was on the 53rd position globally and the 2nd position in Sub-Saharan Africa. And in 2022, Rwanda was 55th globally and 2nd on the Sub-Saharan region. Now, I'm going to go to my last bit of the presentation, which is the RGS edition, 9th edition policy recommendations. And you realize that some of the policies that we have introduced over the last few years, especially since 2018, are ongoing policies because they speak about multi-year approaches. And one of the ongoing policy recommendations including designing and operationalizing a multi-year nationwide strategy for mainstreaming climate change resilience into development plans. Because once we don't mainstream climate change, everything that we'll do will be really at risk on the basis of not being able to have our climate resilience as intended. We also have an ongoing policy in the education sector to enhance the quality of education to support the attainment of a knowledge-based economy. Rwanda is committed to pursuing a knowledge-based economy, and the education sector is a bedrock of that. And I hope the partners that are in the education sector remain committed to an education system that is supporting the attainment of a knowledge-based economy. As mentioned by the RR, we are in living now and behind. And that calls us to speak about also inclusiveness in many aspects. So we introduced a policy this year on enhancing efficiency and effective management and effectiveness in the management of social protection programs for persons with disability. Of course, social protection is for all of those that are quite vulnerable, but when there is a disability as an addition, how we engage should also be considerate of that particular disability. You must have seen in my presentations that even categorizing the people with disability hasn't been on a fast track as it was. We are just completing the national census, but we were not able to even complete the categorization of the 400,000 people with disability identified in the previous national census. And therefore, I hope the new data, as the new data emerges through the census, we really pull up our efforts in the effective management of social protection and reducing the vulnerabilities surrounding people with disabilities in all the different areas of our engagement. We also have introduced a recommendation on dealing with the backlog of cases, and we think that the judiciary should devise measures to reduce the backlog of cases in courts, including some of the innovative ways. I know at some point we had backlog cases, and the Court of Appeal was born into from the perspective of trying to reduce the backlog of cases. And certainly we were doing well close to COVID-19. But what COVID-19 and the lockdowns did allowed a bigger expansion of the cases, of the backlog cases in some areas. But we, as a lawyer, I know we say that justice delayed is justice denied, and we cannot just, I know the Supreme Court is trying to, and other justice sector profiles are trying to do the needful to do this, but this is a matter of rights as well. We also have introduced a recommendation on improving the role of non-state actors, specifically CSOs, in promoting good governance and the fight against corruption. You know, the fight against corruption can only be successful if we believe in it as a collective. The civil society, the private sector, and the public. Sometimes the public is at the receiving end, but we should also be speaking at the giving end. So, but we know that given the decentralized character of civil society, including the faith-based organizations. So when I'm speaking about civil society, in this case, I'm also speaking about the faith-based organization. What you preach and what you teach to the citizens will become what they practice. And therefore, the fight against corruption is something that we should remain committed to, because remember, in our definition of governance, there is efficiency in using our scarce resources. We cannot lose into corruption despite the minimum level of the loss, because whatever we lose, sometimes it's the life lost as well. We also have sustained the recommendation on strengthening measures to control inflation to the minimum level, and I think the world globally is concerned with what goes on in the economy. So if you do not strengthen your measures to control inflation, of course the economy has its own risks. And also the policy recommendation that crosses over the years includes strengthening efforts related to revitalization of export promotion. And of course, in the area of service delivery, promoting a culture of service quality, I should say that in collaboration with other partners, the Rwanda Governance Board and other oversight institutions have come up with service standards. And we hope that service delivery the quality of service delivery only becomes improved in a consistent and sustainable way when we want to create in our working areas a culture of service excellence. And previous years, we noted that the absence of standards for service excellence impacted actually on the demands of service delivery. Because we can tell, if you go to the sectors that have a particular discipline, the appreciation of their services is very specific. So we also call upon all service providers to integrate these quality service standards into your manuals and create also accountability for that, but also create knowledge and capacity in the people that we lead. But we realize that there are particular areas, especially the agriculture sector, the land and public transport sector, really need to improve their service delivery in order to get close to the targets that the NST1 provides for. I'm glad to end this presentation with an appreciation. The Rwanda Governance Scorecard is a product of the Rwanda Governance Board, but the job that we do would not have been possible except for all of you as partners. The data that we use, the resources that we use, the knowledge that we engage on, of course the challenge that I'm looking forward to receive just after my presentation makes us improve the product every day. So in particular, we want to thank all of you for even accepting our invitation and allowing us to present this product. And also, we recognize that the previous launches have helped us actually improve on some things with the indicators and variables of the Rwanda Governance Scorecard. But we want to particularly thank the government of Rwanda for providing us with a budget to fulfill its mandate. Now, when everyone asks me about my mandate as Rwanda Governance Board, they go, who gives you money? And I go, why? Because doesn't the government control you? And I said, no, because it's a strategic choice for this country to hold ourselves accountable. So neither does the government, nor does UNDP, a very dear partner in this journey, ever ask me to change results because they are giving me money. We have had a very professional relationship, but the choice to be accountable requires that we create spaces for accountability. And as I earlier said, the Rwanda Governance Board and the Rwanda Governance Scorecard are very specific tools for accountability. I would also want to appreciate the One UN, in particular through the UNDP, for providing with us financial support and other forms of support. You know, we have never failed to have either the One UN RC or the UNDP, and often both. Even today, we don't have the RC just because there is a contradicting engagement that came up earlier. Actually, they had requested us to keep the position because continuously he had wanted to come to participate in this. So please send our appreciations to the UN team. We appreciate the partnerships. We want to appreciate the institutions that provide us with data because the Rwanda Governance Scorecard is a data document, and we cannot do the job except if we receive the data that you provide to us. And a big thank you to all of you for being here. And we are open for your challenge, your comments, and your remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, CEO, for a very elaborate presentation. We've now reached that moment where each one of us who wishes is free to make a comment, ask a question, or make a contribution in any way we want. I think I'll request the CEO to stay here and listen to the comments and questions, and then she will tell us how to respond to the questions. So if you allow, CEO, I'll open the floor for anyone with a comment or question. We want to interact with you. We want you to participate. I'm sure that from what she just presented, we've been able to pick a few things that interest us, but we also have books, the publications for this RGS on our tables. I'm sure that some of you may have gotten time to go through, and possibly you have a few things to talk about. So the floor is open. Yes, there is a CEO of REG.
Thank you very much. My name is Ron Weiss. I'm the CEO of REG. We saw in the presentation that as a country we need to improve on the service delivery. I think we see it everywhere. When we go to the bank, when we go to the restaurant, when we get service in the hotel, etc. So it's something that we need to put on our agenda. We need to discuss about this and improve the service delivery all over the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, Honorable.
Thank you so much. I don't know whether you allow me to speak while seated.
Yes.
Thank you. First of all, I want to thank the Rwanda Governance Board for the presentation of the 9th edition of the Rwanda Governance Scorecard. I think it has given us a lot of information that we can use to improve in the performance of different institutions in this country. In particular, I want to agree with the CEO of RGB on the safety and security pillar, that sustaining the gains is very crucial. And I'm saying this because safety and security provides a very strong foundation for all the other sectors to thrive. So I totally agree with the comments of the CEO on this. I also want to to make a comment on the citizen participation on the elaboration of district plans, Imihigo and budget, that is actually the most improved according to the report. This is not only crucial in fast-tracking development, but also builds a strong ownership of development by citizens, and indeed an assurance of sustainability of whatever we do in this country. So I just wanted to make those comments. On the same note, I'm also curious to find out why there has been a clear decline in the quality of service delivery from 81.86% in the 8th edition to 77.69% in the 9th edition. I'm very curious to find out what might have caused that. The other curiosity I have is under the rule of law, on the performance of the legislature. I'm saying this because I come from the Senate, and I wanted to find out why this report focuses more on the Chamber of Deputies and not also on the Senate. And I'm saying this because this report is very important in helping all of us to improve. And therefore, I would want to make a request that perhaps in the 10th edition, you should also focus on the Senate so that we are able to gauge the performance from an external view. So those are my comments, and I want to thank you for the very good report. And indeed, it has been a very important tool that helps our country to improve in all sectors that this report focuses on. So I want to thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable. If you don't mind, you may introduce yourself. I've been seeing people eager to know who is speaking.
Thank you. In this case, then I will start. So my name is John Bideri, and I'm a senator. I previously was the chairperson of the Foreign Affairs, Cooperation and Security, but now I'm in the Commission of Political Affairs and Governance. So that's who I am. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That is our boss, actually, because we do the report to the Political Affairs and Governance part of the Senate and Chamber of Deputies. Sure.
Yes.
Thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank RGB for Rwanda governance scorecard. Secondly, I would like to give a suggestion about graph.
Honorable, if you don't mind, may you introduce yourself first? My name is Ndagijimana Leonard. I come from PDC. Secondly, I would... PDC is a political organization.
Yes,
he's representing a political organization.
Yes. Secondly, I would like to give a suggestion about the graph. From 310 to 27. I would like to give a suggestion like that. Where is addition, you can put yards because it can facilitate to compare the result. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There's someone at the back. Yes, next.
Yes, thank you. My name is Ernest Dukuzumuremyi. I'm working with an organization called Interpeace. I have just a few questions. One is about the method of scoring. I give an example of where, for example, why do we have, for example, targets about the perception of people? If I give an example, we are saying about the target to measure perception on arrest, detentions, and release procedures, where we scored 100%, while, for example, there are over 22 persons who expressed some concerns. So in terms of accountability, if we ignore this 22% and we only consider the target, so we are missing some information. The second one was about the human rights, where, for example, we are only talking about proportion of the children who experienced physical, sexual, or psychological abuses. We are only presenting that as in relation to the number of people who were victimized, but we don't I missed the indicator where we show how their cases were addressed. The percentage of the people, for example, who were provided support. It is the same, for example, when we are talking about personal safety. I wanted to see what about, for example, the rates about the domestic violences, or also, for example, the case of suicide. We have been observing the increase of a number of cases of depression, for example, in the countries. Maybe if we had these specific indicators, it would indicate those responsible to respond. It is the same, for example, under the service, the social protection, where we are talking about the percentage of people who demonstrated improvement in social, and the beneficiaries of social protections. The percentage is at 86%, while we declined in terms of the people living under the extreme poverty. So I don't see how we score at 86%, while we decline on the overall number of people living in extreme poverty. The last point under economic, I wanted to have indicators about, for example, the price index and the purchase power of Rwandans. Thank you and congratulations to the RGB broadly. You did very well.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Eric?
Thank you very much, CEO, for the nice presentation. My name is Eric Mahoro. I'm the Deputy Director for Never Again Rwanda. First of all, allow me to say that the quality of RGS has significantly improved, having testified the previous editions. So this is really important to mention. I want to come back to a few things. First is regarding the service delivery. What I think the findings reflected the realities when it comes to the issues raised in service delivery, particularly, for example, in the sub-district entities. We have all seen through various other studies that there are still issues. But I would like to recommend that under the policy recommendations, we see tangible actions regarding capacity strengthening, for example, for local government, including in terms of improving staffing, increasing the budget for that. Materials, we have seen that the challenges regarding material, internet, for example, are among the key issues they are facing to improve services. Plus the attitudes, I want to appreciate the fact that Honorable CEO, you have commented on things like just the attitude, transformation of behaviors that would help us improve in those areas. Regarding participation, and specifically on decentralization, I would like to recommend, with the due respect, that we also look at areas like sector decentralization, which we have seen that they are critical to the decentralization process, and also the intergovernmental relations. For example, how do different levels of government interact? How do they actually help us reach the level needed in decentralization? Lastly, it's about social protection. Really, if you look at the performance of the social protection area, it also reflects the reality, but when you go back to the recommendations, most of the challenges can be solved by, for example, improving literacy about the social protection services which are available, and also changing the attitudes. So also when it comes back to the recommendations in that area, I would like maybe subsequently or in the institutions to find a way of integrating
Eric,
that.
on the aspect of sector decentralization,
Yes.
You said that you are doing something about it. What are you proposing to happen?
I propose considering probably in the subsequent editions, looking into sector decentralization, because we have seen that there are still some gaps when it comes to sector decentralization and also intergovernmental relations. So those are the two key areas if you look into that critically. So otherwise, thank you so much for this and also opening up the floor.
Thank you very much. I would like to first respond to these, the initial set of questions, and then we'll take another set after.
Well, thank you very much. I would like to appreciate the comments that some people made. Most of the comments that reflect areas that we need to do better or areas that we are doing better. The CEO Reg left the room, but I wanted to appreciate to particularly appreciate their commitment to service delivery. Every year we consistently go to Reg to present to them not the Rwanda Governance Scorecard, but actually the citizen report card on the perception of how their staff are doing. And I've seen, it's interesting when we do it, even perception improves. We do not relate that, but when there is very clear messages on the commitment of institutions towards the quality service delivery, even the citizens will appreciate. So I know there was a recommendation on capacity building, and I know that recommendation on capacity building goes hand in hand. CEO, I was really appreciating the fact that REG is a very good partner now on service delivery. Not just the service delivery approach, but the fact that you open up your spaces with almost all your staff, and we tell you what the citizens are thinking about you, very specifically, you as an institution. And of course, there are so many other institutions, some in the local government sector, that have asked us to tell them exactly what they are doing, in particular the meetings that we have had within the city and out of the city, showing people exactly what people are thinking about their service sector. So one of the best solutions for service delivery is also to hear the opinions of those that we serve. And I hope that beyond us bringing you the opinion, you're going to devise means of getting the right feedback from the people that you serve, and then complete it with other feedbacks that we all get in order to improve service delivery. Yes, the capacity of the staff is key, but also the soft skills that we put them into as part of service delivery is core. I want to agree with the senator on sustaining the gains. You know, as we deliver on the National Strategy for Transformation, we have made a commitment that we are going to sustain the gains of the things that we have achieved, because they become a great foundation of what we can do better subsequently. And I think so many people are also in Kigali because of the security, that we all feel safe being in Kigali, and that's something that we cannot take for granted, but rather really appreciate our security providers and make sure that we are all participants in this direction. You asked the clear decline on the quality of service delivery. I think the bigger part of the decline, I'll really speak to it like that. Initially, for service delivery, we were also assessing issues of infrastructure. So some of the things that were performing very well in this pillar were relocated. We relocated the infrastructure elements to the economic pillar. We relocated the transparency elements to the transparency accountability pillar. So it's not so much a direct decline, except where the citizen perception has been a little bit lower on some aspects. But in fact, it's because we decided that in this pillar, while we relocated that, we also introduced assessment on particular service providers. I earlier mentioned we asked service delivery, and we used beyond the infrastructure that we were pulling. So if we had brought in, we had, for example, brought the security as service delivery. But we decided that security was going to be left into security and not into service delivery as an apparatus of service delivery. So the restructuring also informed part of the decline. So we restructure. I think she earlier, the RRs earlier mentioned that the RGS is a living document. We were also assessing existing of infrastructure. So if we already have online systems, IREMBO as an online system, we no longer, under the service delivery pillar, assess IREMBO as an online system for its existence, because that infrastructure is already there. We moved to how do the citizens appreciate the functioning of IREMBO. So that is really, that kind of adjustment also captures the reasons why some of those things changed. I want to appreciate Ndajijimana's question of adding years. We moved on to the editions because in the beginning, and I appreciate those that recognize the change, in the beginning, there are two things that we have improved with the RGS. Sometimes it was impossible. In the first, second, I think, and third edition, there were not annual publications as such, because it required that we get data from the citizen report card, which covers a bigger part, and then put that as part of the data for the next year. So most of the time, the citizen report card could not come early enough to have the RGS as part of the end of year. We have been able to really streamline that. The citizen report card data is ready to be used for the RGS of that particular year. And I think since 2018, we have been issuing an RGS every year. So initially we had them as editions because we were not certainly sure that they were going to be annual publications. But when we decided that they were going to be annual publications, we kept that. But also remember I said some of the data of the editions are not particularly from that particular year because it depends on the source of the data. But I think I'll take your recommendation that hand in hand with saying the edition, so next year we are doing the 10th edition, but we are issuing RGS for the 12th year because there are certain periods that we had 2 years overlap instead of doing it into the first year. I think I take your recommendation that in the next editions, we are going to be saying the edition and the year specifically, because that allows people to really locate the edition in terms of space. Ernest from Interpeace requested to understand the targets, the scoring method, and you asked a very interesting question that we have had in our writing phases, in particular on issues of creating a target on perception of the people. Now, remember our RGS measures according to the existing commitment. So in Rwanda, the National Strategy for Transformation has targets on perception of the people. We have created a target that by 2024, citizen satisfaction with service delivery is going to be at 90% overall. When we do the CRC, and you will see that when you look at our data, we have the space that speaks about data, and we have the space that speaks about target. For the CRC, the citizen report card, when we disseminate it on 100%. But also we don't want to lie publicly that 100% is equal to 90%. In the other hand, it's the same. So when we come to RGS, the principle of the RGS is we measure against a target that is established in either of these three areas. For some sectors, the priorities and their targets are very specific in the National Strategy for Transformation. When they are non-specific, annual targets actually, when they are non-specific annual targets, then we push it to the sector strategic plans. The sector strategies, for example, the security sector has set a target of service delivery satisfaction above than many other targets. Even within themselves, they have set the target a bit higher. Or another sector has set a target that we think would have been a better target. So when we think the target is, usually we use the target as set in the NST1. When the NST1 is not specific in terms of target, we use the target that is in the sector strategies. And when we don't have a target, we use the data as a percentage data. So why do we measure perception? Because we decided that we are going to have a target on perception. Because it also informs the inputs. 100% can be the end. So when you see 100%, that's why we record the data and the target. You were able to tell that there is a 20-something lacking because you saw the data. But we will measure the data against the target and tell the country that by the target of 2024, we are doing so well. But by the fact that we still have issues, the data shows. So I think it's really important that you understand the methodology and the basis of our assessments. The basis of our assessment is in particular constructed on existing standards in very specific ways. And that is how we do the assessments. Now, of course, you make some recommendations, and I appreciate. And of course, some of the recommendations need an understanding and a readjustment. As I said, when we launch, we get comments. We have a secretarial team that is writing all the comments here. And when we are going to write the next edition, when we start preparing for the next edition, we look at some of the recommendations that came from the audience, and we integrate it if it reflects what we are looking for in the Rwanda Governance Scorecard. We do not assume that the Rwanda Governance Scorecard is the only score, and of course, for any scientific document, there are limitations. So some of the things that are proposed here will have the limitations. For example, some of the things you proposed. Human rights proportion with people who experienced how their cases were addressed. Let us start with why we asked the human rights proportion for those who suffered sexual violence or anything. If you go and read this SDG, Goal 16, Goal 16 has very specific priorities on these particular sectors. On the sectors of child abuse, there are very specific targets that are set. So part of this data comes from the data that we collect in reflection of our commitments through the SDGs. If they said that they are going to measure peace as one of the SDG priorities, and in the pillar of SDG under peace, we are being asked to have data that reflects on that form of violence, that is what has informed us to put this in. Now, some of the data, for example, the question you had on suicide, when we did the dissemination of the Rwanda governance, of the citizen report card last year, we were asked to go, actually from some of the participants, to include in the citizen report card. So I want to mention that you are receiving the Rwanda Governance Scorecard today, but the citizen report card is also a publication that when we finalize presenting a report before Parliament, the publication of the citizen report card is going to be online as well. And some of the questions you are asking, we ask them in the citizen report card. We don't put all the data there, but for example, on suicide, when we asked the question, it was even below 4% as a response of the existence of cases. So it's true some of those cases might be there, but we have some of that data in some of our other publications. Eric, thank you for appreciating that we are improving. I really want to appreciate that all of you here are part of what helps us improve in this regard. And I also take note of your policy recommendations in many ways. And I think most of the things that you raised really are areas that we need to improve on. So if I may, I will not enter into responding to that, because some of the recommendations people give here are for reflection beyond this room. I think we can take very few more.
There's Ambassador Christine, then there is Chair of NINGO, the Vice Chair of Rwanda Civil Society Platform, I think the two MPs. Then there's also...
Thank you very much. I'm Christine Ngurikinha, the CEO of Rwanda Corporation. At this point, I just want to thank you very much, dear CEO and your team, for inviting us here today. And also congratulate you for the 9th edition of the governance scorecard. As you know, at Rwanda Corporation, we receive many delegations that come to benchmark on Rwanda, and particularly on governance. And here I want to thank you also again for the very good collaboration we have. And when we talk about service delivery, I think we do it at the national level, but also at the international level. And I consider this 9th edition as a really a tool that will help us to provide good service, as we will be able to provide evidence-based and contextualized data, which will also help the visitors that come to benchmark on Rwanda really understand what we are doing, but also see how they can implement it. So basically that is my contribution. I just want to thank you again, to appreciate our collaboration, and again, congratulations. Thank you.
Yes, William.
Thank you. First of all, I want to say congratulations to the CEO and the RGB team for a successful launch of the 9th edition of the RGS. There's actually quite a lot of rich information here that is quite significant and of good use to many people. So I'm William Tero, the chair of the Network of International NGOs. So my reflection reading through the report was, I think there's a clear demand for more participation or the role of CSOs, especially in promoting good governance. And we take that as a challenge, representing our international NGOs, and I'm sure our colleagues in RCSP, about how we need to reflect on this report and see how we can make meaningful strides or improvements, engaging with relevant stakeholders, the citizens themselves, and a lot of other stakeholders that we can put on the table and reaffirm our commitment to ensure that we complement government efforts, making sure that we do better. So when it came then to the rating of our service delivery, I was also challenged, and I was like, maybe this is actually one of the areas that we need to address. So we feel also challenged by that. And we would also be keen to learn, because we can see that some of our partners that we work with in the transformational governance pillar or in the social transformation pillar are doing much better than us in terms of service delivery. So there's actually quite a lot to learn there. And we would approach RGB and try to see how we can involve our members in discussions on what are some of the good standards and trends that are being adopted elsewhere that we can learn from. But I would then also pose a question, CEO, to say, probably there are some institutions or clusters that are doing better than us. What are some of the top trends that you are seeing in improving service delivery that we can take note of and quickly try to gather some quick wins around this area? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Emmanuel Nzeyimana. I'm the Vice Chair and Deputy Spokesperson of Rwanda Civil Society. We start actually by highly commending the work by RGB team and the quality, methodology, consistency in publishing the RGS. Really, congratulations. Mine's still very short. We've seen that actually non-state actors are really highlighted under a number of recommendations, and performance and recommendations are very clear, well noted. I really connect with the point from the Nyungo chair, whereby actually recommendations are very clear, but I'm having a feeling, dear CEO, that under the mechanism for tracking the implementation of recommendations, we are not really seeing the non-state actors really highlighted. We are seeing honorary ministries, but for us to make the non-state actors really accountable, we should be putting them actually under that particular section for tracking and monitoring the implementation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, dear CEO, for this 9th edition. My name is Valence Muhakwa, representing Social Democratic Party. While looking in the trends, the pillar of investing in human and social development is decreasing year after year, from 82 to 75 in this edition. Now we are launching. So I wanted to know the reason why this pillar is decreasing year after year, while it is an important pillar to reach the SDG. My other question related to interrelation of all those pillars. All 8 pillars might interrelate, but some are increasing and others are decreasing. For example, the pillar of safety and security is on the rate over 90, around 95%. And the last pillar, the quality of service delivery, is lagging behind the rate of 77. I want to know the reason why all those pillars have the difference in increasing. My point was that they might increase together or decreasing together, but they are the difference. I want to know your position as a researcher. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam CEO of RGB. My name is Peraji Uwe from Senate and Deputy Chairperson of the Committee on Political Affairs and Governance. Thank you for launching this 9th edition of RGS. This is our mirror in the governance. Thank you so much. I appreciate the recommendation and call upon each institution to take care of it, depending on his mission. My question goes on the page 44 of this report. In part of climate change resilience, where seats of Kigali and provinces don't have a target. Did you miss it in the report of REMA? If yes, did you ask why? And why don't you use other target from the different institutions? Thank you.
Thank you. Eugenie?
Hello, thank you very much, Madam CEO. My name is Eugenia Kaitesi. I'm the Executive Director of IPA Rwanda. And like many others, I will start by congratulating you and your team for a wonderful report. I have 2 points, Madam CEO. One is on the gender balance. You actually mentioned it, and I like that you really highlighted that. At first, I was wondering why we are actually at 82%. I thought we would be at 100%. And you gave a comment, and I really appreciated your comment. But in the recommendations, I did not see a recommendation that we should give to the policymakers. And I think we need to be emphatic at recommendations we really give to trickle down the gender balance at all levels of governance. Another comment that I have is on the trends. I think someone has mentioned it. I noted that there is a particular edition, I think the 6th edition, when all pillars performed less, and was wondering whether you know why that particular edition really all pillars were performed less, and probably to inform other pillars that would be coming up. Thank you, Madam CEO.
Thank you. So I think we don't have anyone now.
Well, thank you very much for the questions and comments. I'm going to ask Dr. Félicien, the head of our research and homegrown department, to respond on the question raised by Senator Pelagie on the targets in our on climate resilience. Do you want also to say something a little bit on the decreasing of the investing pillar? And then I'll come after you on that. Yeah, I think Félicien will take the floor and have an explanation a little bit on that. And congratulations to your team, because I'm delivering on the results of your team.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable, for the very good question. In fact, when it comes to assessing climate change resilience, we use data from REMA. The target is just one, meaning that it is a good performance when it decreases. That is why I don't see maybe probably in the corona of the target, as you said, there is no target highlighted. But obviously it's one. That is why you see city of Kigali and the other provinces, it's around 0.30, something like that. But the target is supposed to be 1. It's the way REMA is assessing this particular indicator. So if you allow, there is by our colleagues from Interpace related to the price index. If you allow, I'd like also to address this very good question, where he asked about including on macroeconomic indicators, including price index and the PPP. PPP is economic terms related to purchasing power index parity, which is an indicator measuring different countries' currencies through a basket of goods in terms of productivity and inflation. But in this particular context, we were limited to some macroeconomic indicators, as you see in the report. We didn't take all of them. I know that this is also particular and a very good indicator, but we don't want to compare with other countries when it comes to purchasing power parity. That is why we are limiting headlining inflation at national level, which is produced by NISR. Remember, this inflation monthly, and at the end, NISR produce the headline inflation at the end of the year. It is the one we are measuring here. Otherwise, we don't ignore the importance of this one, but we don't take all of them. And there are some other very important indicators in macroeconomic indicators, such as for example, budget deficit rate, which is also important, but we didn't see here, as well as domestic debt vis-a-vis our GDP, but we didn't take all of them. And we are limited and we are guided by our national target, included in NST1. That is one, if we don't see some more very important indicators, specifically in the macroeconomic indicators, don't be surprised, but we deliberately took this one you see Otherwise, I agree with you. It's a very important indicator, but we can't capture all of them in this one. And remember, this is particular governance, not specifically economic research document. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Felicier. On the question raised by the NINGO chair, William Tello, thank you for taking responsibility. It's one of our core choices on holding ourselves accountable. And I know both NINGO, the Network for International Organizations, and the Rwanda Civil Society platform have been effective in the areas of JAF as partners in districts, and maybe looking at the reports of JAF will also be helpful for us. But also I know that you both have made a commitment of really moving towards creating a report of the civil society. And I think I would really appreciate eventually when we did the first edition, and looking forward for the second edition launch. And this is also data generation. I think also I should appreciate that the more you generate this kind of data, the more it becomes also very clear on the level of participation in the sector. But well, I appreciate. Now you mentioned, for me, to say where we think a lot of positive trends there is, you know, really service delivery is less of an infrastructure thing and more of a behavior thing. And we've seen the sectors that have a particular discipline. So when you look into transformational governance, the appreciation that goes to the security sector is much higher. But also the level of accountability in those sectors is extremely high as well. You know, the police will always be highlighted as having a certain level of corruption, but they also come in the first level of fighting of anti-corruption. So while you are matching the fact that there is a given amount of corruption in the police, people appreciate the level of accountability in terms of dealing with corruption. In many areas, the corruption margin is not, the accountability margin is not emphasized. So I would say that other than the tangibles, the way we receive people, and I would really be lying if I said that we are doing very well in that. The CEO of REG said in the hotels, the complaints come out. In the public transportation system, the complaints come out. And sometimes in the civil society, there is a lot of other priorities, but being conscious that the people we serve, there is a certain level of service delivery that is required is key. I really would like to appreciate that when we started off with assessing service delivery in civil society, we received a lot of positive reaction from the civil society because many of the things that we are asking did not work. But I will give you a benchmark. Together with different partners that are in the regulatory sector, we've come up with standards, service standards. And they have only about 5 to 7 areas. They include timeliness, they include responsiveness, they include reliability, they include the tangible, the space in which we serve. They are not very scientific things, I should use the term, but they are things that we create in the mindset. How do we respond if somebody sought a service? And it's an area that we all need to improve. How do we collect feedback? How do we treat, how do we treat the people that come to us, even though you don't get the results of the service, but you get a humane treatment vis-a-vis the people that you're serving. So we as RGB have a mandate to share, and I think at some point we shared these service standards, and we want organizations, RDB shared with the private sector, the Ministry of Local Government shared with the local government sector, and then the Ministry of Public Service shared with the public service sector. But we know we are in the first phase of awareness because our analysis in the service delivery sector has been, we are reactive. We speak about service delivery as an action, but service delivery is consistent if it's part of the discipline. if it's part of the culture. So I think how we prepare our staff, the inductions that we do with our staff, and the tools that we give them in order to hold them accountable in terms of delivery is an area that we all need to improve. You know, I was with the education sector, and I will not apologize to my colleagues from the education and academia sector. We teach knowledge, but we don't genuinely teach how it will be used. It's not a common thing that we teach people. I was taught to be a lawyer, but I don't know how I was taught to be a lawyer. I was taught law more than being taught on how to be a lawyer. And law can be a very specific discipline because they have a lot of procedure courses. And that helps a little bit get close to how you really practice law. But how you treat those you're practicing law with or on lacks in most of our curriculums, you know? So in a way, I think the education sector, the soft skills of how we treat people, the soft skills of how we express ourselves are still lacking. And therefore, we in the service sectors need to have that continuous approach of capacity building. I want to appreciate our colleagues from the UK government, the UK embassy. We worked with them on a very particular program, and the mayor would attest to that, through what we called a coaching program, through JAF. And we did coaching through JAF, bringing together partnerships, and really speaking about the attitudes of service delivery. And you realize people are just waking up to some of these attitudes and some of these priorities. So capacity building is core. But I think the kind of capacity building we are supposed to be speaking about is kind of apprenticeship. Learning the things that we can do better, you know. Unfortunately, many times we don't become our own clients. And if we are our own clients, we would not like to be treated the way we treat others. So I would recommend that we are all still at a wanting level, I should say. The security sector is a discipline. The discipline has facilitated them to do a better thing. Continuous training, I have been given the opportunity to be a trainer in the security sectors, and I'm amazed how much they train. I think we really should be looking at spaces of training that build capacities. You know, it will be easy to know that if I've been trained at this level as an officer in the army, it will lead me to take these responsibilities and give me this level of delivery. And I think we are still lacking that in our sectors of service delivery. So I did not answer your question very directly, but I think, you know what I want about this Rwanda Governance Scorecard? Let's go back and re-engage on some of these issues. So today is just a launch, but the Rwanda Governance Scorecard will remain relevant, and we should really create spaces to engage on the things that affect us. We have engaged with the local government on some of these things that affect delivery, and as I said, they are not big things, unfortunately. But if we don't practice them, then they are big things. It's how we speak about them and how we engage on them that improves. So I think I didn't go into details in that specific area, but let me connect your question with the one that Dr. Emmanuel from the Rwanda Civil Society Platform asked. You know, we ask about governance and service delivery. And I want to recommend, both in the faith sector and in the civil society, to consider the importance of governance. The private character of the areas that you are in sometimes undermines the core values of governance. I'll just use an example. The Deputy Ombudsman in charge of corruption is here. We wrote to you several times and asked you to have your structures for anti-corruption. You know, there is a legal requirement for having an anti-corruption committee, I think, in your institutions. I have written a few letters to you. I have hardly got responses. So I'm saying that as one of the core areas of space. We have encouraged you to look at your structures and integrate elements of money laundering and the fragilities that go around human trafficking, money laundering, and all of that, because it has an impact on our economy and on our people. But the response rate is not forthcoming as it comes. So you will realize that when governance is at stake, because governance provides the strategic direction, when there are lacks in the governance principles, in the governance structures, most times it affects, especially in the private civil society sector, most time it affects the way you do business. And I know we have very good partners in the civil society sector in the areas of accountable governance, in the areas of dealing with social security. Actually, if you looked, part of our report is government was supposed to increase partnership with service delivery on delivering in the areas of social protection. And we have highlighted that as not as performing as well as we want. But in some of these civil society structures, even accountability to the status quo, to the real issues, remains a challenge. So you cannot, with moral authority, hold accountable government when your governance structures are not in the right position. You require a moral authority to hold us as government accountable. And that moral authority will be defeated by how your structures, and I'm not speaking about the lack of law, I am speaking about the commitment to implementation and delivery. So I think there are areas that we can improve in that sector, in the areas of governance. But I think, as you said also, how you portray what you do. You know, there are so many things that get done in the civil society sector. 65% of our schools in high school and primary education are owned by the faith sector. We have existing partnership between government and many of the faith sectors in 51% of those situations. I think 56% of those schools. How we record that delivery from your side, because we receive your reports, sometimes they are not as complete data that we can sustainably use to report in these areas. So there are some also few things that can be improved in that direction of delivery. Honorable Muhakwa asked about the decrease in some of the indicators and for a particular year. Let me say that the year you are speaking about in particular is 2018, I think, if I looked at it right. And remember, we had just approved, that was just a few months that we had approved the NSD1. We were transitioning from the previous government program to the next program, and we also adjusted so much on the RGS on certain elements. I don't know what my colleagues say, but I think also the adjustments are also clear record of that. Now, that doesn't explain exactly why that particular year has had delivery issues, but it was immediately a year after elections as well, and people were starting to implement the strategies were coming into place, the sector strategies were coming into place. So if you look at that year, it was also mostly a year of creating the foundations for delivery. So some of the changes are not major. We do not have very major declines in that regard, but I think some of the realities around taking off on a new program, making sure that you have the right targets, I should say. In that particular year, the new targets hadn't been defined. So you will know that when we were delivering on the ADPRS2, we were using the ADPRS2 targets. It was a year in which the ADPRS targets were being merged with the NST1 targets to really focus on the right targets. So we have also improved on targeting, because we have the NST1, we have the national, the sector strategies, and therefore the spaces of assessment have improved in many ways in that direction. Now, I think the fluctuation of performance is expected, because I think that I've heard economists say this phrase that is probably the only phrase I use in Latin, the ceteris paribus phrase. I'm a lawyer with non-Latin words. But I think that is one thing we should stop using. because the realities of today do not have a lot of ceteris paribus. You know, there are so many factors that are not remaining constant, and therefore, because so many factors are not remaining constant, they affect some of the things. One of the things that we probably should have noticed is after 2018, the trends moved towards a very particular direction. But if you look at how sectors get affected, now let's pick the COVID-19, how it affected the social protection sector. We all know, not just in Rwanda, even globally, decline into poverty levels is a reality. You know, the realities, the geopolitics realities, the realities that are related with COVID-19 create some of those declines. I think we need to celebrate at this that we didn't actually over-decline, because under the circumstances, and maybe that's one area we should celebrate partnership in reality. The way we addressed COVID-19 and the way we confronted it was so much reflected on adjustments that are concentrated on those reflections. We need to celebrate the consistency of our security sector, you know? And we know that in Rwanda's governance, the primacy of security is a core element. Our survival depends on having a secure country. And the understanding of a security has expanded on the existential threats that we've had, including our unity and togetherness. So I think if we ever find a situation where we are not consistent on our security platform, we would lose what we are. Our security, that's why we measure unity and reconciliation under the security sector, because that is an existential element, and this is not to undermine other areas. But if you look at some of the areas that there has been a lot of changes, they depend on factors that cannot be just local factors. The economy cannot be just a local factor. COVID has taught us that health is not, when you look at the social protection, I mean at the social pillar, health, despite the challenges, remains the leading sector. It's above 80, the other ones are all below 80. And why? Because we have created an ecosystem of the health sector that people trust. Health insurance has remained consistent. COVID-19 that challenged the existing systems, we were only able to confront it because we had a pre-existing governance mechanism for our health sector. That was very easy to reorganize because we have partnerships. It was easy to re-engage with our partners in the health sector. We were able to adjust in that regard. So some of these fluctuations that come up are not major. We record the changes, but we know some of these changes are not as big as we think. Why? Because we know the reality of fluctuations is real. You know, the rebound of last year, our RGS had the economy with minus 0.3 growth. That was normal, that was expected. Today we had a rebound of 10%. So I think understanding the fluctuations within not within the targets, but within the contextual. Remember that I said one of the advantages of the RGS is that it is a contextual document. The context also affects how we perform in this direct pillar, in these pillars in very specific ways. I think my sister Kaitesi mentioned that, appreciated that we go beyond. You know, we don't just celebrate, we go beyond the numbers and understand the celebration. Because before we know, you don't want to be comfortable and not see the bigger picture. The context also requires that we go deep. You will look at it in the local government sector, the vice mayors for economic affairs are predominantly men at 82%. That in itself is a gender bias, I should say. Why would there be an assumption that we can't do economics and development? And then the reverse is true for women. Women are predominantly social welfare. Why is there a presumption that and in the city of Kigali they are stuck because economic and social has been merged, which I think is the right direction to go, and now it's a woman in charge. So when you merge economy and social, women can handle. When you separate social from the economy and development, it becomes the affair of men. And we have to, even when we are doing the right thing, we have to interrogate the right thing. And I think that's what exactly we are doing in this regard. Maybe Felicia should have mentioned, but we have these general recommendations that I show in the presentation and at the end, but for every sector that we assess, I think when you look at the book, we end with a recommendation. If we forgot that part of the, I know we did a recommendation with the local government, but if we forgot that part of the recommendation with the other decision-making levels, we will take note of the recommendation and really consider that as a particular way. Now, I think you will allow me to close at this. And again, I want to really appreciate your contribution. Was there anyone that we really, really wanted to say? Mayor, you want us to leave this city without your word? You know, you should know your bosses, eh?
Thank you so much, CEO. Pudence Elwindisa, the city mayor. Actually, I had planned to say something, but I stepped out when you are giving mics around. So I've got two comments. Number one is just a vote of thanks to actually, when we get these RGS with key specific indicators and recommendations, it brings us back on the table and see how best we can perform, especially on the key element that probably we are not moving very fast as expected for us to be able to reach the target in the NST1. I concur with what you said and also others on the service delivery. We still need to improve. When you look at in some of the institutions, probably we're speaking from the city perspective and districts. When you look at what we had as the service charters, I think there is a room for improvement. I think to align with the current situation, the expectations from the people we are supposed to be serving, and adjust a little bit and be able to monitor ourselves and improve. My other comments on the pillar number 5, I think it is human and social development. You rightly put it in a way that we all appreciate what is happening in the health sector. And again, the experience and the benchmark actually we have in the health sector, the resilience that we have demonstrated, especially previous month when we were combating or fighting against the pandemic, definitely shows the proximity of the health sector and again, the consistent performance, probably with a slightly room of improvement as well. However, when you look into the education sector and the indicators that you projected there, can pick like the dropout. Definitely, it is a direct link that we are seeing with what is happening in our families. I'm glad that recently the education sector, actually the government through the education sector took a decision to revisit some of the decisions that we are taking in our schools, in the PTAs, the parent teachers associations, that could also have been probably some of the source of the dropouts, because a school could work up and put up some of the fees that probably might be a barrier for some of the parents. They therefore create a dropout. But again, we believe this is going to be a solution without definitely compromising the quality of education, because we again have that policy of school feeding that has also been also a source of some of the schools, the kids dropping out because of some of the fees that were not properly set. Number 3 is also probably the role of the parents to be able to monitor and to follow up what is happening to our kids, because the family conflicts are the major source or cause of what we are seeing in the school dropouts. But if we couple that, if we solve that and couple it with the solutions that have been recently, published, and for us in the enforcement, we believe this is going to be a solution to that. Definitely, plus the motivation that was there for the teachers, and also following up for the quality part of it, we can monitor and see if it is bringing some of the solutions. My last comment, CEO, is on the environment protection. Today, Rwanda is being a destination because of probably the persistent good performance of the security organs. Rwanda is a secure country. We need probably to reach a point where Rwanda is going again to be highly ranked as a health country. But unfortunately, the indicators on the climate change, the resilience is still questionable. The air pollution is still an issue. The environment protection, probably there are things that we can do, others that are global. We met very recently with some other cities in the COP, the Ville, when we were talking about those solutions. Yesterday, for those who attended the Youth Connect Africa, a young lady that was really advocating aggressively on how we can probably be alert on the climate change issues. The floodings are happening in our cities. The biomass issues that we have in our country. You all know that the cooking gas is a solution, but to which extent shall we probably be very confident and say that all households are going to be using cooking gas? Definitely, it's not tomorrow, it's a journey. But there are some solutions that we can really tackle on right now to fix environmental issues that are affecting our country, our cities, to the extent we can be having a secure country, stroke health country, by coming up with some resilient solutions to protect our environment. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lord Mayor. And I think I will end at that. The sustainability of our future depends on how we mainstream our environment. And I think the connectivity of what we do in terms of governance, in terms of the economy, in terms of social transformation, is really a core element. That's why you find that in the RGS we do economic governance, we do social governance, and we do transformational governance, because we are so interconnected in that. As I close, I want to thank all of you. Thank you to all our partners that we deliver together beyond this in ensuring that there is governance in this country, and really strengthening the good governance, in ensuring that service delivery gets improved, and in ensuring that we are able to deliver together and better. Thank you very much for being our partners, and thank you very much for coming here. We shared the copies of the Rwanda Governance Scorecard, but I think as of today we also have it on our website for those who want to access it electronically. We would really appreciate if you interrogate us on it, challenge us, and make us able to produce a better Rwanda Governance Scorecard. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, CEO. Thank you for your patience. I know we kept you standing for quite a long time. Thank you very much for responding to the questions from the audience. And we highly appreciate you, all of you who have made comments and asked insightful questions. These questions help us to think more and continuously improve what we are doing. So we highly appreciate, we appreciate everyone for their participation. We now come to the end of the presentation of RGS 9th edition. I don't know what is happening with the mic. We'll be breaking for lunch in a while, but before we go for lunch, we are going for a group photo, and I request all the 4 tables here to move forward for a photo. Then I will read the names of others who will join. May I request everyone who is seated on these 4 tables to move in front. Then I request the deputy government spokesperson. Where is he? He left. Okay. I request the deputy chair of Rwanda Civil Society Platform. I request the dean of the diplomatic corps. Is he around? The dean of the diplomatic corps. The leaders of the media associations, RMC and IGIHE. All the MPs and senators. The representatives of our academia. Someone representing UNDP and FCDO staff. Gone. Dr. Felicia should have been there. Judith, Bosco, and Africa. So we are now going for lunch, and please, lunch is prepared for everyone here. It is also part of accountable governance. And we'll have our lunch at the tent room. Thank you very much.